Welcome back to part 2 of this episode with Anna and Debbie. I hope you enjoy this continued conversation on all things motherhood, mental health, and being your own advocate when it comes to healthcare. I want to make sure I ask you, how did you get into midwifery? Is that something that you always set out to do? Were you always interested in it?
I was always interested in obstetrics. I wanted to be an OB. I was always fascinated with birth. Mm-hmm. But how I got into midwifery was I had my first son in the hospital, and I just hated my experience. Mm-hmm. And I remember I toured, and I was being sutured, and my doctor was someone who was my gynecologist. So we had a great relationship. She was really nice. I felt very clear vision of what I wanted my birth to be. Mm-hmm. We spoke a lot about it. It wasn't until I had my baby that I realized that how someone practices, it doesn't matter what you think you want. They're going to practice from their space of being comfortable, and that's not going to shift. Mm-hmm. But after my son was born, because I had all the things I didn't want, I was being sutured, I was being repaired because I had tour, and 2 doctors came in to talk about what they were doing for the weekend. So my legs are up in stirrups, and she's suturing me, and they're just talking, and I remember looking at them thinking, like, this is insane that you don't get how inappropriate this is. That I am not a human being that's actually attached to this body that you're working on. Mm-hmm. And after that, when we were leaving, I just said, I'll never have a baby in the hospital. I didn't even know what that meant. Midwives really weren't on my radar, mm-hmm. but my sons are 31, 20.
It's okay.
So many numbers.
Right. If 28, she loves you equally.
Yes. Yeah. I know it's not the age I care about. I love that. But they're adults, right? And so it wasn't until with my second son, I looked in the phone book. That's why I said that, because it wasn't a Google. And the first midwife I found was the midwife I hired, because just our conversation was so different. Like I mm-hmm. had time to talk and ask questions, and she listened. And when I went into labor, and my family thought I was insane. Yeah. They're like, like, of course, like, because why? Yeah. So my mom was like, my grandson's gonna die. Like, it was really harsh. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because now she gives out my cards, and I'm like, who is this one? I don't even know you. Right. So the midwife that I hired was out of birth, so a stranger came to so she was this little conservative, she's probably the same age as I am now though, little conservative, little white midwife, mm-hmm. and I was just like, dang, this is gonna suck. Like, we're like, I built this relationship, and that was a huge important piece to me, and I'm just like who is she? Yeah. But she is the reason why I became a midwife, because the way she was with me, not knowing me personally, and making me feel so comfortable to do something that was incredibly challenging. I'm not a person. Why you're funny is because I birthed like you. Like, I'm not zen. Like, I'm just like, what do we have to do to get this baby? Yeah. Like, I just want to be done. So, but the way she held space, and it wasn't like she was busy or busybody or a lot of talking, but just even looking at her and knowing that she believed that what I was doing was possible was a game changer for me. And so she's really the reason why I became a midwife, because I was like, I want to be like that. Like, that's I want to do that for women. And she doesn't even know that. I've looked. Really? Yeah, she moved. I looked for her so everywhere, and I have not been able to find her. But she was amazing. And the fact that she didn't know me was really, how can you walk into a room and not know somebody and hold space in a way that really they feel like they've known you their whole life. Right. Wow. So yeah, she's why I became, and yeah, and she was so opposite. Like, all my family was there, mm-hmm. big old black family with a lot of opinions about everything. Yeah. And she just fit right in. I cried when she left that night, because I was like, I just want to put you on my family pictures. Like, I love you. You're amazing.
In the holiday cards.
Oh my God.
So she's really why I became a midwife. So I I became a doula for a long time after that, really, before I even really knew what that was, mm-hmm. For all my friends who were having babies, and they would tell their friends. So I was at their births, and then studied midwifery later.
Is that a natural matriculation to midwifery, like start as a doula and
for some people, not everybody. Uh-huh. I think a lot of what happens for a lot of midwives, though, is their own birth experience is a big shift. And it's funny, because the midwife who I hired was the midwife for my third birth. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I absolutely needed who I had was who I needed. Yeah. For she was the one for me, even though I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Was it difficult, not to say that was so long ago, but 30 years ago, was that difficult finding a midwife during that time?
I just looked in the phone book.
Really?
It was the first one. I just looked midwives, and she was the first one. But the thing about what I know about birth, when you feel empowered by your birth, either you're traumatized or you're empowered. Both of those sear a memory in your mind. Like, even though my son is 30, he'll be 31 on the 10th of August, or 32. Forgot to say. One of them. So he's one of those ages, one of those big ages. Every birth I remember like it was yesterday. Even I like every piece of it. Like I remember when they put him on my chest, I remember him crying. I remember him looking at me, and when I called his name, he stopped crying. I remember an overwhelming sense of love when I saw him. And that was a long time ago. But I think when your birth is big and when it belongs to you, whether it's bad or whether it's good, you remember it. Oh, yeah. So you don't. It's very different than when you just go to the hospital and you have a baby and you come home and you don't even think about it. Like, I asked so many women about their births, and they're like, I don't know. I can't remember if that happened.
I know.
But people who have babies at homes, or people just who think about that experience and are active in that, are an active participant, they remember their experiences because it's huge. Yeah. How could you not?
That's so true. I never thought about that. I don't have any friends who have kids, but family members I spoke to, and I would ask them, how are your births? And they're like, girl, I don't remember. Exactly. I was knocked out. I was like, dang, literally same as you. I remember every detail. Everything. It feels like just yesterday. Yeah, that's wild.
And so that really culturally is what you're taking away from folks. You're taking away the power that they have to coming into your birth with so much power and awareness that you're claiming it. And so when you undermine that, you undermine a whole society. So you undermine how they feel about their body long term. Yeah. That's why I think it's really important for children to be in prenatals and be a part of it, because when someone comes to touch your body, you know that you can say, wait, no, you don't touch my body. Yeah. You ask permission before you touch my body. That in healthcare, that's not necessarily the case. They come in and do things as they're talking to you, but they don't always ask permission. Right. Yeah. So it really shifts everything about who you are as a person.
Yeah. It also undermines your intuition and your ability to hear yourself. And I think in mothering and parenting more generally, it's all intuition. Yeah. And if you don't trust your own intuition, I do think that's when we start to see issues with just feeling I can't do this. Yeah. This is too hard. I'm tired. And those all are real. Yeah. But when you have these empowering experiences, I am such a confident mother. I go into mothering very look at, again, I told you, I'm you can do this, look at me. I'm the best. I make great decisions. I have great, and that is something that's allowed me, even through the difficulty of parenting, right? There's some parts that are so hard, we know that. There's some parts that are so exhausting, and they will test you in so many ways. But if you have these initial experiences, even prenatal experiences, that are so uplifting, so powerful, and when you're laboring, you're having amazing experiences, even though they're so, again, hilarious when you retrospectively hilarious, in the moment a little angry. But you're holding that child and you're like, look what I did. Yeah. Every day of my mothering is from that perspective. And so I think we often speak about just this one moment, but when we're, again, not to make it so dire, but when we're thinking about the maternal health crisis in the U.S. For everybody, and then very specifically for Black women, a lot of the horrific circumstances are not only in labor, it's in the weeks following. There wasn't someone checking in. Yeah. Or you didn't feel like you should say something was wrong, or you didn't know what you were supposed to feel like. Yeah. You didn't know who to go to. Yeah. I can text Debbie whenever. Yeah. Maybe I text her too much, know? Never. Debbie, I'm sad today, or something's happening, or I'm dizzy, I don't know, we text, she calls me immediately. There's no waiting on the phone, right? And so it's not only just that one moment is so transformative, so magical, so powerful, but it is the runway into the parent you're going to be. And it's critical that stage be one of power and confidence and also grace for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you give me reasons as to why most people seek you out? Is it generally after they've had their first child, or is it a new experience most of the time?
I mean, there's so many reasons. A lot of folks, it's definitely their second experience. They didn't like their first, but some people just want something different and know that it's possible to have something different. Some people are afraid of hospitals. They don't know what they're afraid of, but they just don't like them, and I get them that way. So yeah, a variety of ways.
Yeah. I noticed, not something I noticed, but my last appointment at my OB's office, it was with a midwife, and they told me they had just integrated like midwifery into their practice, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. But it was my first and last time meeting her, of course. I'm like, y'all couldn't introduce me to her beforehand. But do you think that's a step in the right direction in terms of reducing the Black maternal health crisis, or addressing it at least?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that midwifery in any form, whether it's nurse midwifery or licensed midwife, certified professional midwife, those two are what I am, or a nurse midwife where they've had their training in the hospitals. How we practice is very different, but it is better. Like, you do have time, they do speak, they pay attention to the whole person more, but they're still practicing under the parameters of who's supervising them. Right. So it only allows them so much movement. Even if they would practice differently, it doesn't necessarily allow them space to do that.
Yeah.
How do they can't trust their, like, there's in medicine, there's intuition is ridiculous. Nobody wants to hear like intuition. Like, that's not, it can't be quantified.
Yeah, it's
so
not
they
factual.
can't, they can't pull statistics on intuition. So no, that you can't use intuition in a court of law. You can't say, well, my intuition said, but in midwifery you can. So it's different, very different.
I think like when we're looking for like those tangible steps, it's really, how do we get insurance to pay for us to see the midwives we want to see, right? So if you're going to pay for me to have, or cover some of me having a child, then let it be who I want to work with. Yeah. That question of like why we haven't figured that part out is this issue with, again, saying women don't know what they're talking about. Women of color certainly don't know what they're talking about. And if they haven't gone through our training, we don't want to work with them, right? So it's almost, and then for those who might want to seek concurrent care, like you did. And I did it mainly because I just find it really fascinating. Debbie's always like, why are you still going to your OB?
Like, it sucks.
I mainly just come back to be like, guess what she said, Debbie? It was so crazy. Because I just think it's really interesting.
Same, yeah.
And I'm just like a nerd that way. And so it's truly so different. But concurrently, if that's what some folks want to do, then that's also great. So there's steps that we can kind of go towards, but it can't be, let's just like maybe bring midwives into our system, because the system is the problem.
Exactly.
Okay, so we need to move out of the system, and we would 100% hands down solve the maternal health crisis in the United States. There is no doubt about it. If birthing people had the experiences that we did, no doubt. I have no doubt. Like, let's experiment for just a year and we'll see the results.
I have an organization that we do just prenatal postpartum lactation for folks birthing in the hospital, because the issue is the masses are in the hospital. They're not, the statistics aren't based on home births and people who are having out of hospital experiences, hospital experiences. Right. So I do feel that the care is going to make the difference.
If you designed your own healthcare system that would include midwifery, not anything else, but just, just midwifery, what would that look like?
I think it would be, like Anna said, the right to choose whatever type of midwife you wanted, and that if you needed to be in the hospital, they could follow you and continue your care there. Whoever it was, whether it was a nurse midwife, whether it was a licensed midwife, I think it would look something like that. Ideally, to me, a birth center attached to a hospital where you have full autonomy would be ideal, and where I could practice the way I practice, but it's right there if we need them, like literally right there, would be amazing.
I love the idea of that.
And I don't know if we're like taking too long, so feel free to rush us.
No,
I can stay here.
What time is it?
I can stay here for forever. But it's also the care that Debbie gives my baby once the baby's, throughout, right, the entire pregnancy, but once Ezra was born, right, Debbie comes to the house, she's checking his vitals, she's checking me. Right. There is almost this like divide that then suddenly happens in a hospital system, where I remember with my firstborn, I had to take him to some appointment.
Because that releases the OB from liability and now puts the liability on the pediatrician. That's why you need to see a pediatrician within 72 hours of leaving the hospital, because now someone else is responsible for your baby. if you don't see them, the hospital's still responsible for your baby. So that's literally what
a liability, an example of that, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels just, I remember thinking like, I'm still bleeding. Like, how am I gonna like go and like take my, and why does that make any sense? Versus Debbie comes to the house and she looks at the baby, she looks at me. Mind blowing, right? Like I can also still be taken care of and like not, and like Debbie's always having to tell me like, just sit down, Anna, just stay in your room, don't do anything. Versus the opposite with my firstborn was like, literally we had to like drive him like 30 minutes to some other, it's like, what is going on? And I remember feeling like I didn't even bring the pads that I need. That was like, this was my first child. I'm learning how to nurse. He had a tongue tie, like all these things. And easily, like this is a very, it's not, and I think we also only focus on midwifery in terms of like what we've thus far discussed, but it's just so much easier. It just makes a lot more sense. Debbie's coming to my house and she's like, I'll see you in a week. Like I'll see you in 2 days.
Totally. Or call me if something's going on and I can come by. Like, it's just the care you're getting is going to really focus on what's really happening. Or like, I have a headache. Well, let's see exactly what you have. No, that's actually not normal for you to have a raging headache postpartum. But you're at home thinking like, I just feel terrible in general and my body aches and everything aches, and not even recognizing that actually that's an issue. So like having somebody just tap in with you, especially the first week, is really, I feel like, a game changer in maternal mortality. For sure. And infant mortality. For sure.
Debbie, in your experience, after, during their postpartum care, is it a range of when the birthing parents go back to work for you? Or do they typically go around the same time?
I mean, it depends, it's economics. For some people, they don't have the option to stay home 6 weeks. They have to work. Which, I mean, I'd love people, if I could, wave a wand, I'd have everybody would stay in bed for 30 days and have people bring them food and do nothing but feed their baby and heal. But I say, I deal with a wide variety of folks. So some people are getting back to work in 2 weeks or 7 days. So it just really, so you also have to really look at who you are working with. And so it's not appropriate for me to say to you, like, your body would be better off if you stayed in bed for 2 weeks, because they don't have that option. So it's also trying to like design something that makes them feel comfortable with the only choices they have, and heal in the best way that they can possibly heal under those circumstances.
It hurts when I hear, stories like that, and the statistic that, what is it, 25% go back after 2 weeks? Is that what it is?
People
1 in 4.
sometimes have to work. Like they don't, like it really is a luxury to be off 6 weeks.
It is.
Sometimes you don't get if you don't get paid.
Right. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? And then the mental health aspect, because mental health, honestly, in maternal health care is probably one of the biggest issues for me. And for people having a crisis, to try to find a mental health provider is a nightmare. If you can even afford it or your insurance covers it.
Right.
So even factoring mental health services into maternity care is so 100% necessary.
I 100% agree. I've never really dealt with any mental health issues until I had a baby. And it was so foreign to me. I've never had anxiety. I'm very just even keeled most of the time. But that anxiety that I still have, that's seeking therapy for that, and finding somebody who specializes in postpartum therapy. Oh my gosh, it's such a nightmare, like going through insurance and finding all this stuff. It's just easier to pay out of pocket for it, and then it's another expense. It's...
Because it's not normal just to be sad.
No.
But people are, you're suffering because you have no idea that you need help.
And on top of that, I think we have more conversations around postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, in ways that for many generations they did not have these conversations. But then sadly what's currently happening is then we're kind of just telling women, oh, something's wrong with you, right? Something's like broken in you, something, but like we'll help you, but like something's wrong with you. Versus taking a step back and saying, well, what supports were lacking here, right? Is your partner not supporting enough? Did you have to go back to work within a week or 2 weeks? Like, it's not only like a chemical imbalance.
No,
it's like
not.
There's all these circumstances that are leading to this, right? And so we've almost kind of, in a way, done a disservice by saying, let's just diagnose you with postpartum depression. Okay.
And that's mental health in general.
Yes.
Because you're much more likely to spiral if you've had a history of anxiety and a history of depression prior to being pregnant, which is also, it stems from something, a lot of that stems from just childhood trauma or trauma during life that has never been addressed. But you're much more likely to have bigger issues on the back end. So then it looks like you just have postpartum depression, like you said, but it really isn't postpartum depression. This is a nerd having a baby, being responsible for a human, being responsible for yourself as a mother and a human, has like unearthed things that already existed.
You might have had a traumatic experience as your baby was coming into the world. You didn't know what decisions were being made. Like, all of those things, of course, are going to contribute to, or like, I have to go back to a job.
Birth triggers sexual traumas. A lot of times what's happening in your body feels like something that you can't control, like it would for someone who's been, had a sexual trauma in their life. So it triggers things that you just would never imagine. But when you send somebody home with a baby and say, okay, you're good, go home with your baby.
Yeah.
And you spiral, nobody's there to catch, and nobody, when you take your baby to the pediatrician 48 hours after, they're not asking you how you're doing.
No.
You could look like
You have like a little survey to
It's a
fill out.
survey,
Now, but it's like,
yeah.
that's it.
yeah. It's just, and it has, in order for them to help you, it has to be extreme.
Right.
Yeah.
But why does it have to be extreme? Why can't we get it when it hasn't gotten extreme?
Yeah.
So it's just so many gaps in healthcare around having babies that are just hugely problematic.
Yeah, I agree. I get so sad thinking about it, and I just try to be there for my friends. I have, work friends and acquaintances having babies now, and I just try to be there for them during that process and help out. But
that's huge, though.
Yeah.
Because for every one person that you're there for, that's one less person that's by themselves.
Yeah.
Just even having someone to call and say, is this normal? Are you checking in and they sound off? And that's huge, because we've been convinced that everybody's okay.
Yeah.
And you just had your baby and you're fine, and nobody knows that you're at your house crying every day because
Right.
things are going on.
Yeah.
So even though you're not just doing that, that's huge. Imagine if every person did that.
Yeah.
Like, it really does make a difference. Community, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
the power of just being able to say, and the conversation we're really having today is, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
There are other ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks don't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's, if you haven't done the research, or you just had no awareness, or again, you didn't want to like sit in this truth that there's a lot of folks who are not humane and make decisions that are really horrific. And sometimes those are our policymakers.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to kind of wrap your mind around that. And if experiences feel wrong, to be able to tell yourself, it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
There must be some other way. And this is one example of that.
Yeah. I mean, if other countries have it somewhat figured out, we can definitely do the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to pivot just a little bit because I know your time is valuable and I want to hit these questions. But what advice would you give to someone seeking midwifery as an option? Like, are there certain things you would say to look for in their research? Or for me, it was a vibe. Like, if we vibed on the phone, chemistry was good, that's what I'm going with. What would you advise?
I think it really depends on you as a person, because like for you, a vibe, like that's really your gut telling you what you feel about someone. So that's appropriate for you. For someone else, it might be to research who the person is, their education. I think that's very individual to who you're working with, and what some people more is less, some people less is more.
Yeah.
So I think it's just follow your gut. But what I would say that's even more important is grill your other physicians, your other clinicians, like you would a midwife. So all the questions ask questions. We just go to the doctor. We don't know where they came from, what they did, what their stands, what they feel about anything. Like, make them have a conversation with you about who they are, how they practice, what their cesarean rates are, how they feel about people going post dates, because that's a huge issue with inductions. Like, talk to your doctors, like really ask questions. People get intimidated they're less intimidated by us because, it feels better. Yeah. But they're more intimidated by their physicians. Ask them the same questions. I feel like that can make a really big shift in the kind of care you get too.
Yeah, I agree. I never even think to ask my doctors any questions.
Yeah, most people don't.
Yeah, it's so true. Anna, how did you find Debbie?
Oh, Debbie. When did this love story begin?
I'm like, please have 100 babies. She's like,
she
no.
keeps trying to get me to have kids.
Like,
I'm like,
no.
we're done. You just come to the birthday parties, hang out with us. Yeah, no more children are coming. Well, who knows? Anyways, but no.
What did you say?
No. I'm just saying, people who are like, never say never. This is another conversation for another day.
But I heard that.
But when women are like, I'm done, and everyone's like, never say never, I'm like, no. In like 2024, I can declare when I'm like,
I understand. There's an 8-year difference between my middle and my
Really?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I was done.
She called me and she's like, I had a dream, you had another one. I said, don't even put that out in the universe. Yes, we can talk about that. It's a whole other podcast episode. But when I moved to LA, so I had worked with wonderful doulas in the Bay Area who had to commute into Stockton, where my husband and I were living when we had our first, and they were amazing. And so when I moved to LA, I asked them if they knew of anybody, and they were like, actually, I don't, but we're going to do research, because there's also differences, and we talked a little bit about like midwives who are within hospitals, and there's just different ways in which midwives see the experience as well, right? Just like any doctor would be different, midwives are different. And so I was really interested in like, this continuation of the granny midwife tradition. And so they all were kind of looking for me online and helping me find folks. And I came across Debbie's website. And we had our first phone call, and similar to you, I'm very much a vibes person. Like, intuition is everything for
You were
me.
on Zoom. You were in your backyard.
Was it Zoom?
Yeah.
Oh, you remember better than I do. It was a Zoom in the backyard. Malaika was like running around behind me. Now I remember. Yeah. And I just could tell it was that same kind of initial conversation that I'd had with my doula, 2 years before, where she said, this is something that, we're around you. It's not like to be fearful of. And she asked me why I wanted to go from a hospital into a home birth. And luckily for me, I wasn't that I had a traumatizing experience at the hospital, because my doulas were there to guard me. But I wanted something that like was a continuation of how beautiful my first labor was. And just our conversation, all the vibes. It was immediately like, oh yeah, no, this is my person. This is who I want to work with. And I was like, do you have space? Right?
Oh,
because that's also a question.
It's something I never even considered. Like, oh, I guess, you are seeing other people.
Yeah, we're polyamorous out in these midwifery streets.
You're right.
And they're like, you're only mine. What are you talking about?
They tell little folks all the time. They're like, what? I'm like, sorry.
Someone else is coming in.
I date other people.
Yeah.
And that was okay. I was okay with that. And also, I would say, too, you asked earlier kind of how people find Debbie. There is such a word of mouth around Debbie in LA, I will say. And for me, one of my close friends had worked with Debbie for her 2 babies. And then as much as I was talking to other folks about it, her name kept coming up for people as this very beautiful, just powerful person. And once we met in person, it was, again, just kind of like, absolutely, no doubt, this is the person I want by my side as I bring another child into this world.
I love that.
And that's why I don't let her go. I don't leave her alone. I send her pictures constantly. She's probably like, okay, Anna, we get it.
Like more. That's why I was like, please bring your daughter. Like,
I know, she wanted Nehemiah to be on it.
Oh, really?
Like,
Oh, my God.
Because I also feel that children, part of shifting things is letting children be seen. How can you go away from your child for 10 hours?
Yeah.
Like, why can't we integrate them more into what we do? Like, it's okay to take a break because your kid, like, it's okay. Like, kids should be a more part of everything, I feel.
Oh my gosh,
Agreed.
That's so reaffirming. Like hearing
Bring
you
your
say
baby.
Yes, I know. Because I was like, oh, I don't want to bring her today.
We have to
It's
make
just gonna
that
be
shift
so
as
much.
moms.
I know.
We have to show how that's done. Men don't know. They don't.
Yeah.
That's just so we have to. They have to see us with our children and see how we parent and see how we can, like, you don't have to work 10 hours. You can take a break and take your kids for a walk and play in the park and come back to it. Like, we have to reimagine what working with families looks like.
Absolutely.
Like, it can't be work and family. They have to be integrated.
Totally.
So she should have been here. Should have been a chair right here for her. And she's super cute.
The only thing is she would have taken over the entire show.
Which would not be
Nehemiah
bad.
is like the smartest, most beautiful person you'll like ever meet.
Before we go, I want to know, what would be your ideal outlook on the 4th trimester, right? Because that's something I never even heard of until I was like in my 3rd trimester. And I'm like, what is the 4th? Like, what are y'all talking about? Yeah, it's 40 weeks, but okay. But we truly underestimate the postpartum experience. And I would love to know, what would your ideal care for that look like? How involved do our providers need to be in that experience?
Lots. I think there's so many questions that new moms stress about that really could be answered with a phone call. You know, I think that just lots and lots and lots of contact. I mean, because we culturally, how the fourth trimester used to look is your grandmother was over, your auntie was over, they had breastfed their babies, they're showing you how to breastfeed yours. It's like, oh, that's just a latch, you know, you're worried about, it's painful, it really shouldn't be. Like, we don't have that anymore. So we're not surrounded by community and society when we're in our fourth trimester. So I think healthcare providers just need to tap in lots.
Yeah.
Be a lot more accessible and a lot more available. I think postpartum care should be done at home, so you don't have to pack up a brand new baby and take them anywhere. I think at least the first 2 weeks, you probably should see your provider at least a couple of times a week, and them be open to phone call if they need them.
Yes. Anna, how was your postpartum experiences? Just
amazing.
Yeah.
She's a boss though. Her postpartum experience are just like lay down.
Yeah.
She just needs me to stop moving. That's the biggest thing. I'm very like ready to go because I have so much energy, like that like goddess thing that I was telling you about, where I'm like, I can do anything, and then everyone's like, just sit down.
Because it's the only time, if you have the luxury of that, it's the only time you can really just have people bring you stuff and like like once you get up. And once people see you moving, it's over. So it's like lay down as long as you can, and because it's the only time that you're not sick, that people and that it's around something joyous, that you can just rest and take care of your body. So take advantage of that.
I think it's also just really helpful to have somebody who's navigating not only like the physical changes that you're going through, but the emotional ones, where they can just say, yeah, okay, that's how you're feeling today. Let's talk about it. You know, Debbie would check in with me. My doula Julia would check in with me at different times, and we know sort of patterns around our hormones. Like some of these things, you know, it's not that they're the same for everybody, but we know like on the third day, like when your milk drops, like you're going to be crying. Like, so if you kind of know going into it, it feels a lot less of a shock. And we just don't talk to women enough about what that's going to look like. We don't talk to women about like how much blood there might be. We don't talk to women about, you're going to get dizzy if you're standing for too long. Like all of these things, it really just has to be more of a conversation. And I don't want to paint this picture like everything was like so perfect postpartum for me. I just felt that I was supported though.
Yes.
So even when I did feel sad, or even, and I'll say when my son was born, my firstborn, it wasn't immediately for me, like a lot of folks will talk about it like, oh my God, like immediately like this like overwhelming sense of just like joy and love. I also had a little bit of a sense of like real fear. Like I was really like, what? And I was like, what just happened to me? Like, what did you just do to me? Right? A little bit it felt like that. Like, what's going on? And wow, like, and apparently I'm supposed to be feeling like this was all perfect, but I don't really know, you know?
I think that's more normal.
Yeah, and I think we need to talk about that a little bit more. And so there's some moments of fear, there's some moments of sadness, there's certainly moments when you have your spouse or parent or partner or co-parent where you're like, what's wrong with you? You know, like you're going to fight with each other. Like I was annoyed with him, right? And so those are things that like if somebody and other people are there to help you. And so I just need to give a shout out both to my mom and my mom who has passed, but my aunt and my mom with my firstborn were there with me, and they turned my house into like a postpartum retreat. And if my husband had like any kind of attitude, they're like you're not, don't go in there. Like, you know, they like protected me too. And he was wonderful as well. It's just that he was also going through his own emotions. Like he had just become a father as well. And there were things that we just needed community around us, right? It's not only supposed to be just like not the one person, but also not just the two people. You're supposed to have people around you. And I've just been really grateful. So my mom and auntie, like they cooked me all my meals. They know I don't like things to be messy, right? The other thing is that we often will tell women, oh, just like let things not be perfect for a little while.
Yeah, sometimes you can't rest.
But I'm a perfectionist, okay?
Your house is a mess.
I'm not going to sit here in this disaster. Like, so clean up, or I'm going to get up and clean up, and then you're all going to be talking to me about I needed to relax.
Right.
No. So just being really clear, and I had this plan in place that Julia, my doula, helped me kind of come up with, and what were things that I needed to hand off to people before the baby came, so that no one was coming to me asking, like, you know, where are Malaika's clothes or whatever, you know? And my husband knew all those things, but I think that it's just important to have plans in place, have people around you, and know that you're going to be navigating some highs and some lows, and that's completely normal.
But your provider wouldn't know that about you if they didn't know you.
Yeah.
Because how do I know you're in a low if I don't even know who you are? Like you're going to put on a face like maybe you're not. But if I know you, I'm like, that's like, what's really going on?
Yeah.
So it's just, you need to take a 10-minute appointment. You won't know a person. Like you're never going to be able to address what's happening with them postpartum if you don't even really know who they are. Not postpartum.
Yeah.
So it's like, also you have somewhere in maternal health care, the space has to go away from what it's turned to just very clinical and come back to just a relationship with this person so that they're not okay when they're not okay. Because I've had moms go, I'm fine. And I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to sit here until you start crying because I know that's what's happening. And like we're going to have to let that happen. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what needs to happen, but you're just trying to put a brave face.
Yes.
So, but I know you, though. So it's like there needs to be some space that you know that person so that you can be and refer them to what they need to help close the gaps.
Yeah. I hope for this one day. I just think, even if you do have a support system, I just think so many moms are just alone during that time. Yeah. And it's scary being alone by yourself,
It is.
So,
especially with a newborn.
Yes. I'm so grateful. My boyfriend was on strike, so he couldn't work. So I'm so grateful that he was able to just be there with me the whole time. Live here. His family was there with us, helping us like anything we needed. Yeah. And I know a lot of single moms, and I know that wasn't their experience. Yeah. And I couldn't imagine. So I can only hope for a better future one day.
Yeah, and if we can imagine a world where those visits that I had with Debbie and that I had with Julia were covered by insurance, right? We can, as a society, wrap every new parent and every new baby with supports. Right. We can do that.
Yes,
we have the capability to do it.
For sure.
And so I do think often when we're having these kinds of conversations, it can feel so sad and it can feel a little heavy. And to be honest, for me, I feel very hopeful because the alternatives are there. We now just need our policies to support that, make it available. It's honestly that simple. Sometimes we that seems so complicated, that's going to be really hard. And it's like, no, when you really think of any society, everything's made up and we can just make up something different.
Yeah. Literally.
So this is the one we'd like to make up.
Exactly.
Right.
That's true, though. It really is that simple.
Yeah. Well, I could literally talk to you guys for hours, but we have to wrap it up. But thank you all so much for coming today. This was truly an amazing conversation. It was so insightful, and I love getting both of your perspectives on everything. But please tell us, Anna, we'll start with you. Please mention anything you want. Plug, books, everything.
We're going to be here for a minute.
Right.
I won't plug everything.
Do it all. Plug that shit.
That's funny. No, okay, well, you can subscribe on my website, AnnaMalaikaTubbs.com, and just my name.com. And I do have a book coming out in May next year, all about the American patriarchy. Yes. We're going to be taking it down, making up a new society.
Yes.
So that's what I'm all about this year, these days. And just thank you so much for having us. This has been really lovely.
Debbie, please tell us, where can we find you?
So I'm Debbie Allen, Tribe Midwifery. I also have another organization, so anybody who needs maternity care or want to supplement their care, don't have care, in between care, it's the Wellbeing Alliance. It's free prenatal, postpartum, and lactation care.
I love that. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
That was another episode of Milk Junk. We'll see you next week.